Hi everyone, it's Marcia Dehn-Nix here. You can call me Marcy. I am here today with a process video for my color story layout that appeared in the fall-winter issue of Scrapbook and Cards Today. So the color story I was assigned was a soft autumn palette. So the colors I'm using here are ivory, sage, blush, and clay. I selected some pattern papers from the Cartabella It's Autumn collection. This is a gorgeous soft autumn collection, and while it has some reds and darker greens that don't fit my color palette, I can use different papers. Mostly I use the B-sides and not patterns from this collection. Right off the bat, I wanted to use ivory for my background color. And the Cartabella It's Autumn collection has this gorgeous ivory wood grain pattern paper on the B side of the 3x4 journal cards. So that is the base for my layout. And then what I wanted to do was start tearing different pattern papers to get my other colors in there. I started off by tearing the clay paper that I am using, and this is actually the B side of a paper called Fall Festivities. So it's a pretty plaid paper, and I'm making it pretty wide here. And when I tear it, I want that white edge to show on the paper. So you can practice tearing it towards you and you'll see the white edge on one side. There isn't really a nice blush color though in the It's Autumn collection. So I pulled out just some very light blush colored cardstock and I'm using that for my blush color. Because it's an autumn layout, I really wanted to include leaves on here. And there's this gorgeous leaf pattern paper in the It's Autumn collection that has all of the colors in my color palette, as well as I said before, it has some darker reds and greens in it. But the majority of the color here, I think, is fitting for the color story. I am adhering these torn bits of paper down on top of each other so that I can see the blush poking out from behind the clay paper, and then I can see all of those leaves swirling around on the next paper. And then I wanted to include some of the sage on here too, and I decided just to do that on the bottom. On the B side of a pattern paper called Scarecrow and Friends is this pretty soft sage pattern with just some polka dots in it. My torn sage paper then is going on the bottom only, peeking out from underneath that leaf paper. So I have all the colors in my color story now. I have the clay and the blush and the sage green and then the ivory in my background. So I can add some photos on here now and start embellishing my layout. Because this is an autumn layout and a very soft color palette, I printed my photos in a sepia tone. This gives it a more rustic, I think, outdoorsy feel. It looks better with my color palette. In the actual color photo, my goddaughter in this photo here is wearing a blue plaid shirt, and it didn't fit the color palette. Sepia tone looks better than black and white with this palette, so I decided to go with the sepia tone photos. I am using some foam tape on the back of my photos to pop them up from the background and give my layout a little bit more dimension. I'm also tucking the edge of the photos underneath the torn paper, partially. So the green paper is behind the photo, but the leaf paper and my clay paper, they still appear in the foreground underneath my photo. Going through the die-cut ephemera pieces and the frames and tags ephemera that come with this collection, I chose a label die cut that I could use at the top to highlight my title. And there was another die cut that said Hello Fall, and it has a pumpkin. And it was really cute to be able to add that Hello Fall. I like that saying better than the one that was there. I am incorporating more of the sage green color here by mounting the Hello Fall die cut on top of some of that sage green pattern paper and then putting it on top of this label die cut. And then I added this cute scarecrow from the sticker sheet, and fussy cutting out some pumpkins from another pattern paper that has pumpkins. And surprisingly enough, some of these pumpkins are this blush color and worked out really well to add in some blush pumpkins on here to suit the color palette. I love fussy cutting my pattern papers, especially floral patterns. There are no florals really in this collection, but I did fussy cut out some of the pumpkins and some of the leaves from this other pattern paper. So some tips from me for fussy cutting. You want to use a very sharp scissors, and a short blade, I think, works better than a longer blade. I am using a cutter bee scissors, and I really like these scissors for fussy cutting. There are some chipboard pieces in this collection that I want to use to embellish this layout. This is actually a trip to the pumpkin patch, even though the photos are taken in front of this big bale of hay. So I wanted to include more of those pumpkin patch ephemera pieces. There was a pumpkin stand in the chipboard pieces that I am going to put on the right side of my layout. And on the left side, underneath my photo, I'm going to add this vintage truck. And what I really like about these pieces is that they bring in the ivory and the sage again into the color scheme. On my pumpkin stand, I am going to add some more pumpkins that I fussy cut out here on both sides of the stand. I'm using foam tape to mount my truck to my layout to pop it up from the background so it's at the same level as my photos. I'm also going to add some pumpkins by my truck. There is a sticker that says pumpkin patch with some pumpkins around it that I want to add behind the truck. I wanted to incorporate a hemp twine bow on here. I love using hemp twine on my outdoor layouts. It just adds to that rustic feel. And I tied my bow with a tool called a Bow Easy. And I love this tool for tying bows. I'm going to add my bow up by my title by the Hello Fall. I had this idea that it would be really cool to add some leaves swirling around in here on the background. I took a pencil just to doodle some lines onto the background paper, and then I could poke my holes for stitching, and I stitched it with a very light sage green thread. And I like to use 3 threads when I'm stitching. I'll use DMC floss, which has 6 threads, and I split that in half. So I have 3 and 3. And what I'll do is I fold the 3 threads in half so that there's a loop on the bottom. And when I thread it through my needle and you start stitching, you don't have to tie a knot in the back to hold the thread secure. You just put your needle through the loop to hold it secure on the back. No knots. I love that tip. My mother-in-law taught me a long time ago when I was stitching something. I'm not a huge fan of hand stitching, but I love how it looks on layouts. It adds so much dimension. So I was very careful when I was hand stitching this not to poke my finger and bleed all over the layout, especially on that ivory background. It really didn't take all that long to stitch the 2 loopy lines that I created on both sides of my photo. And again, I didn't do any stitching behind the photos, so the only stitching is on the sides. Then I took the fussy cut leaves that I cut out from this leaf pattern paper and I added them on top of my hand stitching. This gives my leaves movement. It looks like they're blowing across my layout. I love how this turned out. Have a closer look at some of that detailed stitching. And don't be afraid to try something new, whether it's the hand stitching or challenging yourself to use a different color palette. Thank you so much for stopping by. Bye-bye now.